Welcome to today's edition of the AII, watching stock news, deal tracker, and advancements in artificial intelligence. Hey everyone, this is Sam Mowers here. Welcome to a special edition of the AII featuring an interview with Danny Rittman, the CTO of GBT Technologies, Inc. GBT Technologies is a development stage company which considers itself a native IoT creator, developing Internet of Things and artificial intelligence-enabled mobile technology platforms. GBT trades on the OTCPINK under the ticker symbol GTCH. Now, for this interview, Danny discusses the company's recently announced continuation application for its 3D multiplanar IC architecture patent, as well as the ongoing microchip shortage. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Danny Rittman. Danny, welcome to the show, and thanks, as always, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me today.
So you're joining us today to talk about microchips, and in particular, GBT's recent news regarding its 3D multiplanar IC architecture. But maybe before we get into the company's own news on the subject, I was hoping to get your thoughts on the still ongoing global microchip shortage. So this is a supply shortage attributed to interruptions in the supply chain, largely due to COVID. It seems many commentators still aren't very optimistic about this ending anytime soon, but at the same time, we have seen some softening of COVID restrictions recently in, say, the UK, for instance. What's your take on the situation? Do you think the shortage is going to persist, or is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Like, do you see signs of improvement there?
Well, as you said, definitely the COVID started the whole avalanche, I would say, of this shortage. Beside the fact that, making and manufacturing microchips typically, especially with the big guys, TSMC and Global Foundries, all the major manufacturer has what we call the pipeline. Every company has a queue, and every company needs to tape out or provide their design at a certain time so they can make accurate chips, in a serial. They do some parallel, but it depends on the process. Typically, if you miss the timeline, of course, then it causes a whole avalanche of delays, etc. So definitely the COVID definitely caused here, I would say that it is probably the most impact reason for that shortage. And we can see it in all domains. We see it in the cars industry. Cars do not have microchips. So, the new cars are becoming hard to get. They make them small amounts. That's causing, electronics of all sorts, phones and any other TVs. Everything is being impacted by that. I do predict it will take some time, typically because, we are not even aware how much our daily lives are impacted by microchip, how much they are involved in our lives. We basically have them anywhere: computers, phones, TVs, toys. Name it, and you have microchip there. So the shortage, I don't predict to this situation to get any better in the next few more months. It will take a little time, but I hope, as we all do, that during the next year or so, we're going to start to see things going back on track, especially when COVID regulations are more, now they less the restriction, they lessen them, and things seems like the world decided that, okay, we need to go back to normality. With COVID, without COVID. So I predict, as far as I see it, maybe within about a year or so, we start to see some ease of the microchip shortage.
One response we've seen is that an increasing number of companies, especially big players like Apple, Tesla, Google, Baidu, etc., have in various ways been taking on at least the development side of chips themselves, sort of doing it in-house. They'll speak about the advantages of this, being able to customize chips to their own products and so on. Is this something you think we would see if it weren't for COVID restrictions and these resulting supply chain issues? Or was this sort of thing going to happen anyway, and maybe COVID just accelerated it?
I think a combination of both. Companies today intend to try to keep their IP in-house. So it's much better to design your own chip, getting less design or farm out less out, outsourcing less and do it in-house. And also the COVID also contributed to this. Major companies that used to have major design sites with thousands of workers now, and the world has got used to work from home in remote, which is the new reality of that. So that's another part of it that but yes, definitely it is a combination of both companies. It seems like the Microchip design, or any company that deals with integrated circuit design, prefer to do it in-house, prefer not to outsource as much. Also, another aspect, of course, is the microchips of today are getting more proprietary. IP become more of a confidential. Companies do not want them, their IP to be duplicated, stolen, etc. So also from this privacy issue is another factor that actually causes companies to keep things in-house. Cybersecurity, as you know, is a major issue, and IP theft is becoming a problem. So all this combination of things causing companies to keep things more in-house. That's the main reason. Of course, if chips are on a general basis, or sometimes companies want to just buy to shorten the whole design time, so they can definitely will continue buying probably IPs like a USB unit or HDMI unit just to plug and play to shorten the design. But I do see that proprietary design parts will be probably from now on be kept more confidential, more tight in-houses.
Now, you and I have discussed GBT's 3D multiplanar chip design in the past, but for those who might not be aware, could you briefly explain the multiplanar design and sort of the different advantages it brings to the table?
Yes, the microchips world, I would say, has been evolved significantly for the past decade or so. You see enormous chips today. I'm talking about billions of devices and transistors. If it's Intel GPUs, Intel CPUs, and many other companies are putting more and more transistor on their devices. There are even companies that decided to make chips like seriously larger size, which they say is might as well. I'll make it at the size of a laptop or something really that never had before, because of the issue of what we call the real estate capacity on the silicon wafer itself. There are some limitation eventually, even though we go down in process. We go down to 7 nanometer, we go to 5, we go into 2. Still, there are many the industry, the world, our technology demanding all the time more and more features, consuming less power, and do more things from our electronics, and that's really put the ongoing constant demand on the chips to become larger. GBT's 3D multiplanar microchip architecture is actually a little bit innovative. I would say it's a breakthrough out of the box concept in this domain, because we said, okay, if we take the chip and we actually take, and instead of doing it, even though the 3D existed, I would say, for the past decade or so, still has its own problems, but we say we took it one step further. Not only 3D, we're going to do it on a multiplanar. We're going to take the chip, and let's assuming you see a honeycomb structure, and think about the structure and think on each plane of this structure, I can put a little wafer with circuitry on it. So I can duplicate it numerous times, and then I create a very robust structure that all of a sudden can include much more circuitry on fairly smaller area. So this opened an enormous opportunity in many domains. Memories, for example, memories are pure surface, pure silicon real estate area. As more area I have, I can place more. If I go down in process 5 nanometer, 2 nanometer, I can put more. And here with the multiplanar, I can put, I can triple, I can quadruple, I can probably make 10 times more memory units on the same area. Also, the advantage of our new architecture is its capability of reducing, consuming less power. So we consume less power, we give more real estate on the silicon, the connectivity is actually shorter, therefore it's faster, the performance is faster. It's a great 3 major benefits to make microchips. Yes, it is what we call innovative. So that, it will require from the, I would say, the microchips manufacturer, the fabrication plants, TSMC, Samsung, all the big guys, to introduce new machinery to it. But this is definitely the future because we kind of reach our limit regarding microchips, silicon yield and real estate, the pure area on the silicon. And that's the 3D multiplanar concept.
Now, recently, the company announced the filing of a continuation application for the patent on this 3D multiplanar IC architecture. Could you explain the significance of getting this continuation patent approved, what that sort of means?
Yes, well, again, since we see this IP, this patent as one of our major IPs in this domain, we're going to be ongoing, I would say, continuing and adding to it, probably parallel, filing more parallel patents to protect more its concept. We also, beside the fact we are strengthening, we're basically broadening the domain, each claim or each idea that we put into the domain. For example, one of them is the microsolar cells. In a microsolar cell, think about the opportunity here. If you actually have much more surface with the new architecture of the 3D planar chip, then, for example, watches or all kind of wearable devices can be put microsolar cells, and therefore will need to charge battery only once in 3 months or 6 months. The impact can be huge. So we're strengthening, the claims. We're adding more, I would say, robust protection to the concepts. And we're probably going to do it on an ongoing basis because we see this patent as a major thing for the company, a major IP. So that's the main thing. The main thing is to expand. We expanded, we enhanced some claims and concept that we described at the first one, and we broadened the whole scope of the application. And that's the main importance of the continuation of that 3D patent.
Now, that's all I have for questions today, Danny. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, thank you. I think that's definitely covered. One more thing maybe to remember, that introducing the world, more or less has reached its limit when it comes to capacity and technology, and companies are the big guys are constantly researching for new ways to make microchips. Many ways, many methods, I would say, regarding to physics are checked and researched as we speak by the big guys. If it's Intel, if it's IBM, if it's a microchip based on photons, and all kind of photonic technology and many others, optical, plenty of ways. So far, we don't see any real breakthrough. Maybe there's something that they still in the works and kept secret. But for now, we definitely have reached our what I call it the physics limit of the silicon. And the 3D multiplanar concept can actually assist here, not only just by bringing a whole new concept, make it not only one plane flat, just make it multi-planes, connect them together, and you get triple, quadruple, much more space. It's also can give a life to old equipment because it's actually can still enabling creating chips in the older processes, not only the modern one, the 3 or 7 or 5 nanometer, by using the older machinery. Just need to probably make some modification, and then you make, reviving all this equipment that basically become soon obsolete. So it encapsulates the 3D multiplanar patent IP. It encapsulates a truly futuristic approach, which, as we see, this is probably going to change the face of microchip design in the next few years.
All right, Danny. Well, it's always a pleasure to chat, and thanks again for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for today's AI. If you would like to be a guest or sponsor for this podcast, contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded all investment involves risk and possible loss of investment. To hear more InvestorIdeas.com podcasts, please visit InvestorIdeas.com/audio. And a reminder, you can also hear our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and most audio platforms available. To learn more about GBT Technologies Inc., please visit gopherprotocol.com or visit the InvestorIdeas.com profile page at investorideas.com/co/GOPH. And for disclosure purposes, GBT Technologies is a PR news and social media featured company on InvestorIdeas.com.